Hey everyone, welcome to part 21 of Basic Training, the weekly series where I teach you how to play every track in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Today we're going to be covering Dry Desert on 150cc. I'll be walking you through the advanced strategies that I use in my current personal best, and I'll also provide some alternative strategies that you can use just in case those are a bit much. And trust me, some of the things we're about to go over for this track are ridiculously frustrating to learn. So sit down and buckle up because we're about to cover everything you need to know about Dry Desert on 150cc. The first thing we need to go over is the recommended build, which for this course is going to be Rosalina, Streetle, Azure Rollers, and Paper Glider. We've seen this type of build before, most recently in my Cheap Beach guide. Similar to Cheap Beach, this course is made up pretty much entirely of low traction sand, and Streetle's got a lot of grip to help us counteract that. The world record uses Baby Daisy, Bitty Buggy, Azure Rollers, and Parachute, and as you might have guessed if you've watched some of the other videos in this channel, the use of Baby Daisy means the strategies used in the current world record are absolutely ridiculous. But before we get into that, let's go a little bit simpler and talk about my run first, shall we? Okay, fair warning, we're going to spend about half this video talking about the first 11 or so seconds of the run because the strategies involved here killed about 90% of my attempts. I'm going to let it play out first, and then we'll break it down in detail. The basic idea is that for this first right turn, we want to drift in such a way to grab the 3 coins and then execute a series of drifts that will allow us to hop clean over this off-road and trick off the ramp. This strategy saves about half a second or so over the alternative strategy of just building up a single mini turbo around the first right turn, and then drifting around all the subsequent turns. But it's really difficult to learn how to do this consistently, so let's try and break it down. You're going to start by making your way over to the right hand side of the track, and then start a right drift just before you get to the shadow being cast by the second pillar on the right. Make sure that you're holding left to widen your drift angle so that you don't go into the off-road, and then after building up your mini turbo, release and do a left hop into another wide right drift. This is where things start to get a bit dicey. You want to hold left until you're just a few kart lengths away from the coin, and then hold right to tighten your line a bit and help you build up mini turbos. Then just before grabbing the first coin, start holding left again to widen your drift angle and grab all 3 coins. If you did this right, then once you start your next left drift, you should be able to go around the left hand side of the pokey without running into it. After building up the next mini turbo, start another wide right drift, and take notice of how close I am to the off-road on the left hand side of the track here. This is really important to make sure that you've got a good angle when approaching the off-road. And then once your front tires just are about to clip the off-road, release your mini turbo, hop, and then trick off the ramp to finish up the strat. And yes, the timing of that hop is really precise. I'm not quite sure if it's frame perfect, but it may as well be. Now there are 2 major things that can go wrong in this first 11 seconds. The first is that you tighten your drift angle around the first right turn too much. This will cause you to be too far to the right hand side of the track when starting your next left drift, and then you'll end up running into the pokey. Fortunately, if you're able to recognize early enough that you screwed up the strat, then just keep holding right to go around the right hand side of the pokey instead. The next thing that can go wrong is that you mess up the jump and either land in the off-road or else just not get the trick. This usually happens for one of 2 reasons. First, you were too close to the center of the track when starting your last right drift, which is going to give you a bad angle when trying to hop over the off-road. Second, you started your hop either too early or too late. Unfortunately, I don't have much more advice for how to deal with this other than to just practice. It is a hard strategy to learn, so don't be surprised if you fail it again, and again, and again. But I promise that if you just put a little bit of practice into it, you can get this with a fair bit of consistency, which is good because you're going to have to do it on all 3 laps. But let's talk about the rest of the track, which fortunately is more straightforward than the hell that we just went through. Relatively speaking, that is. This right drift through the pokey is a lot less precise than it seems. Just make sure that once you pass the pokey to hold a hard left on the joystick until after the track starts to curve so that you don't run into the off-road. Once you build up a super mini turbo, you want to make your way to the left hand side of the sand whirlpool and start a left drift. After building up the mini turbo, start a right drift and build up a super mini turbo while grabbing coins 4 through 8. Once you grab that last coin, you're going to have to do a left hop into a left drift to make sure that you can take that turn out of the whirlpool as tightly as possible. Note that building up that super mini turbo is going to require that you soft drift a bit, so if you're having trouble, just build up a normal mini turbo and then do the left drift directly without that additional left hop. In either case, once you're in line with the next 3 coins, do a right drift and then you basically want to just hold left the entire time until you build up an ultra mini turbo. Now as you approach this island on the right hand side of the track, you want to keep your eyes on the 3 paratroopers floating above it. Make your way just to the right of the rightmost paratroopa and then trick off the top of the island. If your timing and positioning were good, you can actually trick off the back part of the island as soon as you land for an extra little bit of time save. I screwed up on lap 1, but you'll see how it looks when I do my full PB run. But anyways, once you get to the other side of the island, start a right drift and aim for the middle of the 2 leftmost trees. Once you're in line to go in between the 2 trees, start holding left on the joystick to widen your drift angle. Now the rest of this next strategy is going to be a bit hard to explain, but basically just past the bushes, there's a really large section of off-road that you'll want to cut. Problem is, if you want to do this optimally, a single mushroom just won't give you enough boost power to make it through the whole thing. So what you want to do is, as soon as you're about to get into the off-road, do a single right hop to start your next right drift, and then as soon as you land, use your mushroom and start holding left on the joystick. Ideally what will happen is that you'll go up this hill and then your kart will get just a little bit of airtime. Regardless of whether you actually get that or not, it's imperative that you start holding a hard right on the joystick as soon as you get past that hill, because it's going to help you both charge a mini turbo more quickly and also put you in position so that as soon as you build up that mini turbo, a single left hop will be enough to carry you back onto the track without losing you any speed. The only real issue with this strategy is that the bushes make it really hard to see where the off-road is at, and that makes it hard to time your hop properly. The only real advice I have here is to pay attention to the grass on the right-hand side of the tree, because you can kind of follow that line to help you out. Other than that though, you'll get a feel for it as you play the track more and more. Everything from the start of the Oasis up to the end of the lap is pretty complicated to learn, so if you're just starting out, there's a much easier way to handle this section of the track. What you're going to do is, after building up your Super Mini Turbo or Ultra Mini Turbo, whatever you're able to get, just drive straight up the middle / left-hand side of that island instead, kind of aiming for the middle coin on the top of the island. This will make the 2 tricks much easier to get. Then, you can drive more or less straight up the off-road and just mushroom through it without doing any of that complicated mini turbo drift hop stuff. However, do note that you'll lose about a second per lap over the optimal strategies that I just went over. Now that we're on to lap 2, we've really only got one more thing to talk about, which is the sand whirlpool. On lap 1, we needed to take the left-hand side to grab the 4 coins, but now we don't need to do that. Instead, in the turn prior to the whirlpool, you want to soft drift a bit to build up an Ultra Mini Turbo, and then make your way just to the right-hand side of the double lines here. Just before entering the whirlpool, start a left drift. It's important to make sure that you land as close as possible to the lip of the whirlpool, and that after you land, you immediately start holding right to widen your drift angle. After building up your mini turbo, you're going to do a pretty strange looking series of inputs. Basically, it's right hop, left hop, right drift. Memorize that, and I'll explain why in just a second. Now, after starting that right drift, hold left on the joystick all the way until you've gotten to the ramp, and if you did everything correctly, you'll be able to get a mini turbo trick off the ramp and land in a really good line going into the Oasis. If you didn't do everything correctly, then you'll have to release your mini turbo early, otherwise you'll go into the off-road either before getting onto the ramp or after tricking off the ramp. So everything that we just talked about, from hitting the lip of the whirlpool to the right hop, left hop, right drift inputs, are designed to make sure that when coming out of the whirlpool, that your alignment is good enough to get this mini turbo trick without going into the off-road. The extra hops actually serve an additional purpose though. You'll notice when coming out of the back half of the whirlpool that the sand is actually moving against you. The hops actually get your kart into the air, which counteracts some of the downward momentum and saves a little bit of time. Now, regardless of your skill level, I definitely recommend the left drift into the whirlpool, but if you're not comfortable doing all those hops in the correct order, you can always just do a bunch of normal hops instead to get pretty much the same effect. And then before going onto the ramp, just do a single right hop before the trick and you're good to go. And those are all the strategies that I use in my current personal best. Let's take a look at how they're all put together in a single run. Before we close out the video, let's take a look at the world record strategies. I mentioned in the recommended build section that they use Baby Daisy, Bitty Buggy, Azure Rollers, and Parachute. And really, the difference between that build and the build that I used is that the world record build goes balls to the wall in favor of mini turbos over anything else. And just watching the run, it's probably evident as to why. You'll notice that the world record strats are generally pretty similar to the strats that we covered already, except that they play like they're on steroids, building up a ton of additional mini turbos and in some cases higher levels of mini turbo than I was able to do with my build. So the question is, why did I use the Rosalina build if this build is faster? Well, before it was discovered that the baby strategies are actually a little bit faster, the Rosalina build was the build that was used to set the world records on this track. The thing is, baby strategies are obviously a lot harder than Rosalina strategies, and they don't usually save enough time to be worth it if your main goal is applying these skills to online races. Case in point, the current world record is only about a second faster than the last world record that was set using the Rosalina build, and it's not even obvious to me that the Rosalina strats were optimized either. But that's all I've got to say about the world record. I'll catch you all at the end of the video. And that's everything you need to know about Dry Desert on 150cc. As is par for the course at this point, I've developed a sort of masochistic appreciation for this course after having spent so much time on it, and I hope that after learning some of the strats that you can all enjoy it a bit more as well. If you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to drop a like and a comment, and check out my previous video in the series if you want to learn how to play Toad's Turnpike on 150cc. Thank you all very much for taking the time out of your day to do some basic training, and as always, I will see you in the next video.